Hey guys, in this video I'll be showing you my updated patch 7.0.3 key bindings and hot icon trackers for my disc priest in Vuhdo. This will not be a video on how I set up my Vuhdo frames, but I will include a link to that particular video in the description box below in case you're interested. Since we'll be using a variety of old and new spells, I would try to keep things in similar spots and orders from what I had before, while also keeping similar feeling spells on the same keybind between Disc and Holy, for those that swap back and forth between those classes like I do. So let's start with keybinds. Under the Spells tab for mouse keybinds, we have, with no modifier, left click as Power Word Shield and right click as Plea. For me, that's a great spot to have my quick, highly used filler healing spells. With the Shift modifier, I have Shift left click as Shadow Mend and Shift right click as Power Word Radiance. With the Alt modifier, I use Alt left click as Penance and Alt right click as Clarity of Will. Of course, these abilities will only be available if you take them as a talent, so I've put them on a modifier key that is a little less comfortable for me to push than Shift. And finally, under the Control modifier, I just have Control left click as Purify. For the rest of my healing abilities, including utility spells and raid cooldowns, I use mouse over macros bound to the side buttons of my Razer Naga mouse. Moving over to the Panels tab and clicking on the Hot Icons button, we have the new list of abilities I'm tracking on my healing bars, starting with Power Word Shield. Since Weakened Soul is no longer a thing, we don't need to use a bouquet here. Power Word Shield should be a default option, but if it's not, just type it into the slot. Next in the list, we have Atonement, which is the name of the buff put out by certain abilities like Plea and Shadow Mend, so make sure you're actually tracking the buff caused by the spell, not the spell itself. In slot 3, I'm tracking Shadow Mend. The ability Shadow Mend, while putting out the buff Atonement on your target, also puts out a separate debuff called Shadow Mend. If you're trying to test this and it's not showing up, be aware that this debuff is removed out of combat, or if you've taken the required damage. So if you're just standing around healing, it won't show up. If you really want to check that it's tracking correctly, you can go to the tanking dummy in your garrison and attack it. Next up is Pain Suppression, followed by Power Word Barrier, then Clarity of Will for when you choose to take it as a talent. And remember, for all of these, if they're not showing up in your drop-down list, you can just type them in the slot. Lastly, if you haven't yet, you may want to save your bindings and trackers to a profile. Doing so allows you to easily swap between specs like Disc and Holy. You can do this by going to Tools, then clicking on Key Layouts. Name your layout, pick the spec, for Disc it is Spec 1, select Load Hots, and save it. I already have both my Disc and Holy keybinds and hot tracker set, along with their key layouts saved, so I can show you how amazingly convenient it is. Switching to Holy, you can see that it automatically swaps to the correct layout, and vice versa. And that's it for this guide. As always, this by no means is how you need to set up your healing bars, just an example of how I've set mine up. And I hope this information gives you ideas on how to effectively use and track your spells. I'll be working on a similar video for Holy soon. Until then, I wish you luck on all the loots.